Thanks for joining us for the Member xCite presentation. The Member xCite presentation is informative, interesting to the audience, and showcases the strengths of the presenter as an entrepreneur and their area of expertise. It's not a sales pitch, it's a 10-minute educational and insightful exploration into what they do. And of course, it's exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our xCite presenter today, Colin Lee from Inspire Realty, to present to us on how to stand out with your brand. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Colin Lee.
But today I thought, because there's a couple of you that have been to my previous presentations, I thought I'll change it up just a little bit, just so that it's more relevant for you, because there's been a few advancements and a few changes as well in terms of the way I've been able to represent myself and my story to my customers and my clients. Before I get started, how many of you love cooking? Any cooks in the room? Wow, that's amazing. How many of you don't like cooking but love eating? How many of you love both? Good, thank God. I'm in a room of friends then. I love cooking and I love eating. I'll tell you more about MasterChef a little bit later. But what I wanted to do today is I wanted to highlight something, and that is the reason why a show like MasterChef versus My Kitchen Rules, I think, has been a more popular show. Who knows why?
I can take a guess, but it's purely speculation.
Yes? Give it a go.
The My Kitchen Rules is rigged.
Rigged? In fact, I'll tell you, MasterChef is rigged too. I was asked to cut my onions 5 times. So they paused the time in, I had to cut it because they had to film it in different ways. So they rig it in some way. Okay, so every show, any reality show you see, they're all rigged anyway. But I think the reason why MasterChef has done better than My Kitchen Rules is because ultimately there were these 3 judges that were guiding the MasterChef contestants who were everyday people. So it's a lot more engaging. But the story here, or the tip here, is that ultimately it's the cooks and the chefs, everyday chefs, that were the heroes. They were not the judges that were the heroes. That was the big difference. So that's probably my first point. Now, I have a lot of movies that I was going to share with you, movies that are memorable. But I'm going to pick one. My favorite movie is Narnia. How many of you have watched Narnia? Do you know why Narnia is so successful? Because the 4 characters, it was Peter, Edmund, and I can't remember, Lucy, and what was the other one? I can't remember. The 4 characters, they were not the heroes. They were the heroes ultimately, but it was Aslan, who is the lion who played the guide. So this is the first mistake I find that most businesses make, and that's largely taken from the Story Brand book, because a lot of us like to talk about ourselves. So one of the things I did prior to restructuring my whole website under the Story Brand guideline was I talked about me. It was all about my story. It was all about my accolades. It was all about my achievements, about what I've done, who I've helped. But it was less about the problems that I was solving for my clients. So 3 months ago, now about 4 months ago, I actually engaged, not a VX member yet, but I actually engaged a great storyteller. And he's actually a short film producer. Lucas Productions, if you ever want to look him up. One of the videos that he recorded had 2.8 million views. And I was referred to him, and he looked at my website and he goes, Colin, your website doesn't excite me. I talk about Inspire Realty, your website doesn't inspire me. So what can we do to help my website talk to my clients, to be more relevant, to be more engaging to my clients? So he looked at my website and he goes, Colin, actually, let's sit down. And he sat down with me for a cup of coffee one day and he says, Colin, who are you working with? And then I went on and I rattled. I said, I work with mom and dad investors. I work with young professionals. I work with busy professionals. I work with nearly every investor, high income investors. I named everyone. And then he says, who are you really helping? Who are you passionate and who do you find greatest purpose in helping? And I said, actually, that's something for me to think about, because if you look at the types of clients that I love serving, they're young professionals. The 35 to the 45-year-olds who are busy. They don't have a lot of time to look at properties. They don't even have time to sometimes think about their financial future and to prepare for their retirement. Get this right, we are living longer than ever before. You know, only about 30, 40 years ago, our life expectancy was 70. Now we're living well and truly into our 80s. So for a lot of people, they've got a lot of years of living to do. But what's really sad is that we are not prepared for our financial future. So I was able to articulate that. And what are some problems of some of these young professionals? They're too busy. They've got money sitting in their account, but they don't know where and how to invest it. They don't know how to get started in the property ladder. So he helped me identify who my clients are. And today what I want to share with you is some of the things that I took out of this latest media release that was written. Because Alwyn shifted it and goes, Colin, we can talk about that, but one of the tips she shared with me is that you have to find what is the greater problem. And I struggled with that because it's not really talked about very much with young people who've got money sitting in the account, looking to buy their first property, but can't afford to buy their first property and therefore they have to rent-vest. That's not really talked about in the media very much. So she said to me, Aldwin, said, Colin, I want you to figure out an issue or an industry or a community problem that's happening at the moment. And I want you to be addressing that problem. And I said, what do you mean by that, Alden? So she sat down and she goes, here are all the problems that are going on. What can you speak about? And it's interesting because we came up with the idea that homelessness is a big problem. And I knew that deep within. And what I do in my business is intrinsically help people who are homeless in some way, shape, or form. How do I do that? I bring more investors into the marketplace. I get them to buy into investment properties that ultimately get rented out to potential renters. So there's a bit of a fine line because you've got to look at affordable housing and shared housing as well. And she was able to really help me to articulate what the major problem is in the industry. And that's how I got the major press release done, which is what's got me into Channel 7 yesterday. And I'm in Jimbuba Times, I'm in Redland Bays. I've just been told before I came that my story has been picked up by Courier Mail. Can you believe it? So I'm like, wow. And I tell you the secret to that is this. We did a lot of research. So number one, she says, Colin, you've got to know your message and you've got to know your audience. What is your key message? Ultimately, what are you trying to say? And my key message is we need to solve the homelessness crisis. We need more properties on the market. That was it. That was my key message. Then I found out, by the way, in 2016, the Australian Bureau of Statistics had said that there are 116,000 people that are homeless. 116,000, my friends. That's a lot of people that are homeless in Australia. And then it went on by saying, because I did this Mission Australia study, and I found out that people who are homeless are not people that sleep in the road or this 56-year-old men. That's not a typical person that most of us think is homeless. In fact, they said that homeless people are people that sometimes live in their cars. They couch surf in their family and friends' place. It's a much bigger problem. That's why there's 116,000 homeless people around. And it's a big problem. And then you fast forward 4 years later, in 2020, another study was done, 290,000 homeless people in Australia. Now, I'm waiting for the latest figures, but I reckon in the last 2 years, that figure will increase way more than 300,000. So I was able to talk to that, and that was, believe it or not, what Channel 7 had asked me about. So for 2 minutes, we talked about homelessness, and then he asked me, what can we do as a nation to solve homelessness? And I think that will be a separate presentation altogether. But I was able to really hone in on what my key message is. That's tip number one. How do you get yourself known? Know your message. Know what you're trying to say. Know who are you trying to help. Know your audience. And know the problems that they're facing. Really get to know their problems. So much so that in that story brand book, it says, know the problems so well that you can articulate the problems of your client better than what your clients can articulate. That's huge. That was a game changer for me. So know your audience, know your message. The second tip I like to share with you is do your research. Because in any industry that you are, financial planning, you've got mortgage brokers, you've got accountants, you've got marketing experts, you've got IT, you've got rental. Every single industry has problems, society problems. So you've got to figure out what you're trying to do and who you're trying to help, and then figure out some stats. And do your research because you want to be the person that's known in that space. So now Aldwin has helped me to create my own brand, which is Property Prince. and I'm a property advisor helping people and my clients to build a better future together. Last thing before I finish, and I'm just about time's up, the third one is to share your story. And can I just say, get a good mentor for that. Olvin is exceptional. She showed me how to use Facebook stories and how to share my brand and really just helped me to leverage off the stories that I've got to get the message out. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that's going to do for my business. Thank you very much. Colin Lee from Inspire Realty, property advisor and a buyer's agent. Thank you for your time. And thank you, Regina.